morning to everyone. It's a privilege to be here with you all and to share my perspective on Africa-China relations. I am Frimpong, Executive Director of the Africa-China Center for Policy and Advisory. Now this is the title of my topic, which is Leading at the Edge of Chaos, Why China Became the Perfect Partner for Africa. And this is very significant because most times it's not about the size of what someone gives you, but it's about the timing of when the person showed up at your doors to help you. As they say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So you might be at the lowest point in your life, and maybe just 100 yuan can save you. And somebody shows up and gives you the 100 yuan. That is very valuable than when all is good and somebody gives you, let's say, 100,000 yuan. So the relationship between Africa and China is very significant in this way, and that is what I want to share my perspective on. So in Africa, leading to the early 2000s, there were three things that were existing on the continent. One of them is civil wars, diseases, and death burden. There are other, incidents that were happening across the continent, and these were the situation of the African continent. So the areas of civil wars, these are but examples. We have the civil wars between countries, and we have the intrastate wars as well. So these are examples of such incidents in the continent in the early 1990s, as you can see, in Sudan, in Chad, in Angola, in Liberia, in Rwanda. Genocide, we all know the story of Rwanda in 1994, what happened to that country. So these were some of the existing circumstances on the African continent in the 1990s to the early 2000s. In terms of interstate and cross-border disputes, we have Nigeria-Cameroon disputes, we have Algeria, Morocco, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia. So these were also some incidents that were happening on the continent within this period between countries as well. And of course, we had issue about disease burden, right? So in some parts of the world, the continent of Africa was labeled as a death sentence. So if you are traveling to Africa within this period, you are being told as if you are signing your death warrant, because you go and you might not return. That's what they say. But then, of course, we survived, and a lot of people also came and they survived. But that was the incident on the continent, and I'm not denying the fact that we have challenges in terms of healthcare issues in most countries on the continent. So that was also a prevailing incident in the continent in the 1990s, and of course the early 2000s. Of course, in Ghana, for example, we had something labeled 𝐂𝐡𝐢𝐧𝐤, and fortunately for us, we were able to kick it out in the early 2000s, the last one being portfolio. So these were incidents on the continent, of course. The third is also about the debt situation. I think the previous speaker even touched on it, where he mentioned that even in between 2025 and 2028, Africa has to cough up over 100 billion euros to pay our euro bonds to avoid the bond crisis. But then again, in the 1990s, after the World War, we saw a number of countries in Africa, hitting the debt burden. You all understand the issue about the structural adjustment program that happened within this period. So most countries were in debt, situation. That was the situation of Africa. So three things. We talk about the crisis in terms of civil wars, we talk about disease burden, of course the death burden. These three instances were very common in Africa within this period. But then again, within this same period, we saw what was being reported when some countries showed up, in terms of these crises on the African continent. These are some of the report that was received around the world in terms of what other countries were trying to do in the African continent in this period. The New Struggle for Africa also reported. This same period in 2000, as you can see, the whole continent of Africa was branded as a hopeless continent, right? And this is the cover of the Economist magazine in May 2000. Now here is the significance of what I'm about to say. Now we all know the history, all of us are aware that the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, the FOCA, was also initiated in 2000, right? So at the point where the continent is in difficult moments, challenges, disease here and there, civil wars, and of course the death crisis, the continent, one part was labeled the continent as a hopeless continent. At the same time, a country, China, stepped up and initiated the FOCA. And we all know the rest is history. Most of the stories, the success story has become very enviable around the world in terms of how the relationship between Africa and China has been accelerated, how it's now become a worry for some actors outside of Africa and China. The FOCAC has become that pivot that has generated and initiated all these enviable position between Africa and China. So in 2000, a continent, hopeless continent, FOCAC was initiated in 2000. So that is the point that I was trying to make, that at what point did the help come? It's very important. It's not so much about the quantity or the size or the volume, it's about when the person showed up to help you. And this is the situation of the continent of Africa in 2000, when China stepped up to organize the first FOCAC and everything else we've seen happening on the continent. Of course, for most parts of us in the rest of the world, we care so much about so many things, right? Education, food, healthcare, shelter, right? So we also needed a partner that have that immediate experience in overcoming some of these challenges. And of course, that was for China. Now, I just want to share some key highlights, which buttress the point of what I made earlier, that when China showed up, it was at a time that the continent needed help. It was a time that we had infrastructure being dilapidated because of the civil wars and the unrest that we saw. Our healthcare system was broken down because we were hit with so much of a lot of diseases here and there. And so I say that, suitability of China for Africa. One, because Africa was unattractive to our traditional partners. So at that point, they didn't see Africa as a place that you can do business. Africa was not a place for investment. We just boxed together under what you call the aid bracket. So we just had to dump some aid here and there to make us feel good. That was how the continent was seen by our traditional partner. But then we needed to have a partner that sees us as a place of doing business. And that was the situation. Now, we have a huge infrastructure need. And who better positioned to help Africa than China? And of course, within this period that we spent here, we've been in Zhejiang province, we had the opportunity to travel across this province, and we've seen tangible infrastructure that so much needed in Africa. So this makes China a perfect partner and a suitable partner for Africa. They have the experience, they have the techniques, and they have the resources to support the African continent. The third is resources for infrastructure. We've all seen this debate going on in countries in Africa. In my country, Ghana, we signed a deal, under a Sino-Hydro deal with China. One is even under our bauxite, where we are exchanging the mine of our bauxite for resources for infrastructure. And this is only done between Africa and China. And that is very key, because at the end of the day, it's a cycle. You mine your resources, you go, you sell, you bring the money in before you then find a partner to develop infrastructure for you. But this is direct exchange, and that is why it makes China a perfect partner for Africa. Cheaper alternative infrastructure development, as I said, China developed infrastructure cheaper for Africa than any other partner we have seen. And there was a story, but of course, because of time, I can't say it. So that is an equal treatment of all countries to China and Africa. I think there's a mutual respect of all seen it. And as we know, whether you're a country like Nigeria with about 200 million people, or a country like Botswana with just 2 million, or a country like Ghana with just 32 million people, we are all treated equally when it comes to our partnership with China, and that is very significant. Now, to end, this is my goal: to succeed in Africa, you need to be built for Africa. And for me, with all that I've seen and researched and read about what's happening between Africa and China, I believe that China is built for Africa, because they came at a point that the continent needed the real support. Thank you very much.